just to give everyone an idea of how we can use the Clifton strengths. Not that you had much choice in it, but I appreciate it. Okay, fantastic. So today we're going to talk on the unified meta model. I'm very glad John O'Gorman's on the call because I took one of his LinkedIn posts from yesterday, and we'll talk through it today, and hopefully it can make more sense. Now, I've got some fellow presenters. I'm just wanting to check if Paul Bolton's around. I'm sure he is, just to make sure he's there because he's going to help me with some of the presentations. Ah, fantastic. You there, Mr. Paul? Great stuff. Okay, great. So we've been going at this now for 3 weeks, and Paul's busy doing the data governance templates. Veronica's doing data integration templates, and I'm doing a whole lot of templates, just things all over the place, and trying to bring this all together. So let's go a little bit further. So this is the course. Now, just before jumping into the specialist area, is there anyone that would like just a brief understanding of the unified meta model? Just before we jump in, sometimes it may get a little bit lost if you don't have some background information. Crystalline, okay. So let me go through we got Paul PG as well. Okay, fantastic. So what is this unified meta model? And there's the definition. It's the unified metadata framework that provides a single source of truth for the metadata. And it's really just bringing everything together. And I wanted to show an example of that. And this is the example I use to be able to explain to people. That's what you see in the DMBOK. I really like this example. Now, lots of the tools, the different tool manufacturers, they'll almost design a meta model per tool type. So we've got BI metadata, then we've got a modeling metadata, okay? Metadata model and ETL metadata model. So there tends to be these industry standards of these different metadata tools, but that's not good enough. We need something to bring all of this stuff together. So we need to be able to link the BI metadata to the business glossary, to the data model, to the ETL, to the data quality. And I'm hoping I'll show you some of those examples on how we're doing it, so that, and this is what I loved about John O'Gorman's comment on LinkedIn, is to say that the business people would like to, a lot of the times they want to start from the business glossary. So from the business glossary, then go and find the reports that have this term in it, or go and find the data quality profile that has an assessment of that, or configuration or database management systems. Where is all of this information? So we want to bring the world together. And at this stage, I'm certainly hoping that as we progress and we've got more and more information, I'll be able to then work with John in using a knowledge graph to share all the information. Okay, knowledge graph is perfect for that. And that will help us tremendously. So I was explaining to one of my customers today in terms of how important all of this is. And I'm hoping you can see from this situation is what we really want to do is to be able to show all of this information. We want to be able to show the horizontal lineage. We want to be able to show the vertical lineage. So from the business glossary, the people need to be able to drill down in terms of saying, well, okay, how does this term map into the conceptual models, the logical models, the design patterns, the usable, and then where did it flow in these different areas? Okay. What was the data store that it came from? What happened in data quality, data integration, data warehousing? And we want to bring all of these concepts together. Okay. Now I'm going to just pause there for a little bit. Crystalline and Paul Grobler, does that give you a nice explanation of what we mean by a unified metamodel? Any questions? Okay, great. Fantastic. And then, John, I also saw one of your questions, and someone responded in terms of a meta model. And then I think you asked, please explain a meta model. I'm hoping, does this give you a little bit more understanding of what these meta models are made up of and how they fit together?
Sorry, Howard, are you asking me that question or?
Yeah, I just picked up on one of your LinkedIn messages. You just asked for clarity in terms of a metadata model.
Oh,
I think
right. Yeah, that was
maybe
from
it was a
Avi.
fishing question.
It was a fishing question. I think that was from Avi. I haven't heard back from him yet, but it's
Okay,
always good to get when someone asks me a question like that. It's always good to sort of do a
get
level
the
set and
context.
figure out
Yeah,
what he means
yeah.
by meta model. He wasn't because
Okay,
I don't specifically talking about metadata, but meta models mean different things to different people. So I was just trying to get a sense of what he was
okay,
asking for. So
okay,
yeah,
okay.
this makes
All
perfect
right.
sense to me.
So yeah. So can you see we've got a BI meta model, we've got a modeling meta model, and then we ingest the data from all our BI tools, from Power BI, from ClickView. And I'm actually going to show you how I've done some of that with Power BI. Power BI allows me to create what's called uh, and I'm just going to give you a quick example. You create a PBIT. From a PBIT, I can read all of the data in my Power BI model, and I can then also create JSON files out of that, which means that um, from my JSON files, I can go and look at all of the different elements, where it came from, what the Power Query code was to build all of that, so I can document all of this information. Um, to give me the lineage that I'm looking at. So basically, there are my BI reports, and I'm wanting to work all the way back and connect the dots, going further back. All right. So this is what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to come back to that one and only one data element definition is, and what is I believe is the business glossary. That's the one that we need to link everything together. Everything we do must be able to come back to that business glossary definition so people can have a common understanding and shared behavior. And this is an example of using a graph technology to be able to link all of these different elements together. Um, okay, so, and there's the DAMA CDMP, or the DAMA, the DMBOK, in terms of just, again, trying to show how these unified meta models coming together. So I've got technical metadata, I've got business metadata, and I can associate the two. So, for example, a business glossary term can link to a logical data model attribute, which links to a physical data model field, which links to a potential code set with code values, which links to an application, which links to a system. Um, and this is the path that we're wanting to work our way through and provide the understanding. Okay, not too much to work too much about that. Um, okay, so let's talk about the data management specialist. So this is the professional. These are the people that are specializing in data quality, in data governance, and these are the people that we will use as we, as data governance specialists, have to build um, procedures, principles, policies, and procedures. We will need the data management specialist to help us define what the procedures look like. And this is one of the screens that one of the posts that I put on earlier uh, this week and last week, is to be able to say these are the important things. From a specialist point of view, we need to understand our data capabilities. We need to understand good practices, and then we need to understand how to do oversight. When someone builds a data model, um, is this a good data model? We need a data model scorecard. When someone builds a process definition, have they built a good process definition or a policy? or whatever artifact they build, how do we make sure that we are doing the right thing? Now, when I was putting the slide together and I looked at these elements, it's like this thought came to me as well. What is the difference when we document all of this stuff? What is the difference between that and knowledge management, but for a data management practice? So if we define all of these things, understand what's required, what inputs are required, how do we produce all the deliverables, what's the good set of data management processes, how do we do oversight? Well, to me, that's exactly the same as knowledge management. And then the thought came to me was the number of times that I have to explain to people what metadata management is. And I must admit, I got a surprise about 8 weeks ago when I was doing a video on metadata management, and Jared Hillman actually he in the right way through the middle of the video, he crossed it out to say, please note, I'm talking about metadata management, not master data management. And I stopped the video and I said, is there anybody else who's confused as to what the difference is? And it must have been about 50% of the people in the class put their hands up and said, I also don't understand what this difference is. So I was a little bit surprised, but hopefully we can show you what some of those differences are. And if you have any questions on that, I can deal with that a little bit later. Okay, so when we get all these procedures, when we get the assurance done, we are basically looking after our knowledge within an organization in terms of how well we do. Now, one of the important elements on this is to say data governance, the role that you're playing is oversight and assurance. And the assurance basically saying that all the critical controls are in place. So let's look at an example of a critical control. Please don't start your procedure on, for example, building a logical data model if your conceptual data model hasn't been defined, or if you're reverse engineering, if your physical data model hasn't been defined. So these are the type of controls that should be in place, and that people aren't expected to do work when they haven't got the right inputs. Okay. So when we define a procedure and a process, we must say what are our input, what are our proactive controls or preventative, what are our concurrent controls. So, for example, when we're building a data model, we should be asking for a business definition or a business glossary. If we don't have something, then we need a data steward to come in and help define that situation. Or in lots of cases, we define it ourselves. And I think Paul Krubler gave a demonstration on that using his elite tool where they got a business glossary definition. Okay, so these are important things that we must be doing. We must be ensuring that people are doing things in the right way, all the controls in place. Otherwise, we miss the deadlines and we don't do things the way they should be done. Now, when we look at oversight, I like this definition of what we call oversight as watchful care, and it's about making sure that we're making the right decisions, our policies are in place, the key risks, the processes are working, and expected results are being achieved. So that's the area that data governance should be playing. And so this is where we are in terms of defining frameworks. This is how we get that how we ensure that as the data governance department. We have to define the frameworks, implementation frameworks. So that's like, for example, if I had data quality, am I going to use Plan, Do, Check, Act? Am I going to use TQM? What frameworks am I going to use to do data quality? Then do we have the principles, policies, and procedures in place? Do we have a reference architecture, the guidelines, the tools, the techniques? Data governance, you must make sure that that's happening. Okay, so this was the picture that John O'Gorman put on LinkedIn, and what he was trying to show here is that if the business start from the glossary, they can then go and navigate all over the place. So they would start from the definition of vendor, That's what it is. And then these are associated elements, the vendor ID, and that translates to our vendor identification, a vendor number. And then these are the definitions of those different elements. So can we see here, we've got business glossary entries, and they map to data dictionary entries. And it was fascinating talking with Chris Bradley in terms of being able to make use of our existing things like data models to, if we don't have any business glossaries, it's a great place to start to create the business glossary definitions. And then certainly from the conceptual model and the logical model, physical, I'd be very nervous of building a business glossary from physical. Then I know you're going to get vendor ID and vendor num, which is vendor ID. That's probably, you don't want to start there. Now, we can create a business glossary, and then if we have the combination of a glossary and a data dictionary and a data model, we could create our data catalog. We can derive a lot of that information from these artifacts. So from these core artifacts, you can basically go all over the place. And there's lots of metadata that you can build and start linking together. All right, so this template project that we've embarked on, starting to put together, what's our starting point? These are the three elements, the starting point. We need a template that, in terms of how we would capture the data, we need a procedure in terms of how we would go about populating the template, and then we need a scorecard in terms of how would we check that we've done a good job, and what's the rating of that job. So these are the fundamental elements to all of the unified meta model, and can be applied to anything that we do. And then just here are some of the examples. So this is the Excel spreadsheet that I'm using. And from here, from this reference data table, I can go to any artifact. For example, if I want to go and look at my templates, here is my template definition for an artifact, any data management artifact. This is the starting point. I need an ID and I need a business key. And then what we've got is the SIPOC, and what we define as the SIPOC, remember that stands for supplier, input, procedure, output, and consumer, who consumes the artifact. And there's an example of the different SIPOCs that we can put together. So this is a procedure on how we would create a DM template or a DM artifact. And then I have the scorecard in terms of how would we score that SIPOC has been put together well. And these are the different ranking terms. I'd rank the process, we'd rank the output, and then we would rank the outcome. So, and this is how I'd break it down. How long is the process take to execute? What's the cycle time? And then what's our efficiency? What quality does it produce from an output point of view? And then what is the value to the consumer? So any procedure that you want to do, those are the core elements that you want to be able to rank. We would have the ranking category, and then we would score. Okay, how well did we do in this area for the different elements? Now that gives me a way of being able to receive procedures and then rate them in terms of how well has this procedure been defined. Everyone's very quiet there. Am I missing anything, or am I going too quickly, or are there any questions? I feel bad because it seems like I'm maybe giving you too much information and everyone's quiet, which is my usual challenge that I face. Okay, so these are the elements. Paul's laughing. So this is the default artifact, this is the default SIPOC, and then this is the default scorecard. And whenever we create a template, we should be copying these three. And first of all, do the artifact, then you do the procedure that people must follow to create the artifact, and then we do the scorecard in terms of how would we assure that that artifact has been done correctly. Now, I wanted to just take you through a example that we're using in terms of these templates. We've had to find a real business case study so that when we train people in terms of how to create the artifacts, we've actually got a case study. Now, I'm sure you saw Debbie presenting that DIY, the DIY product. And I'm using this as our example for the templates that we're using. Okay. So you can see here, these are the people that have enrolled on the DIY course. We then have what we call a leaderboard, and the leaderboard is there to encourage people to practice more, to get better results. And then it also helps us to assess what people are doing, where they're paying attention, what are the quizzes that they're doing, where are they battling, and we can go and look at the results that come out of it. And of course, what we're trying to do is get people over that master pass. Now, and here's an example. We've got the 321 question bank that we feel is very important and can help you tremendously. And what we're noticing is that not many of the people are completing this thing. Can you see here, of the 37 students, we've only got 6 people that have completed this quiz and giving us a 16%. Okay, so that's the analysis and that we're trying to do. And in looking at that, we've said, well, we really need to encourage people to spend more time on this practice quiz. And the reason we want to do that is that when we've seen successful results in our CDNP, the actual course results, here we have Mr. Bolton, he got 89%. And we've just had some feedback from Raj. He also got 89%. That was this week. And then Nancy, I'm not sure if she's on, she got 78%. She just missed that master pass. So what we're trying, and here you can see is how much time people have spent on this practice quiz. And I know I spent 3 days doing this practice quiz, and I was able to complete the 321 questions in 1 hour. And I got 94% on my CDNP exam. It just helped me vet that it was lots of benefit in doing these questions and going through all of the results. So that's our BI product. These are the results that we're getting. And here you can see what I've done is, and just to show you that I'm not doing this all in PowerPoint programming. This is the product that we've got. We've got this leaderboard, and you can see here, this is the different. And then we can look at it by quiz. So here's Nancy. Those are the results that she got. That was her practice test. Then we can see knowledge areas are people paying attention to. So we can see here, for example, there's quite a high rate in data governance. So you've got quite a few people focusing on data governance. Not many people focusing on things like data security, document and content. And the worrying one, for example, was data warehousing and BI, because that's so those they were 11%. Those were the 11%. Or 11 and 10, sorry. So now we can go back and say to people, we think you need to be paying more attention, and specifically to this practice quiz. This is the one where you really should be acing before you go anywhere near it. So we're trying to change people's behavior. There's the level of question analysis, and now here is the metadata that I've pulled together. Okay, so we can see I can choose a data set, for example, grade, and there is my data dictionary elements. And when I click on a data dictionary, I can also then focus on the data quality. So here you can see all the different scores and how the different things are related. Notice how my business glossary was changing at the same time. So not to go too far, on any comments, any questions on how this is helping me piece everything together and connect all the dots. And of course, I'm wanting to basically get to a student identification. And there I can see, right, there's my student ID. It's in the gray data set. And these are the results. It doesn't have any nulls, which is fantastic. These are the distinct elements, and I can navigate through that situation with it. Okay. Yes, Valerie.
Hi, Howard. That's great. Thanks a lot. Do you have a model like ERD or anything that would illustrate the relationship, the model itself?
So what I'm working there. I'm working towards that. So as I'm completing it, I bring it into Power BI, and I bring all the connectors in there, and I build the. So I'm just going to open up that Power BI for you, just to be able to show you. You just give me a couple of minutes. I'll open that one. So yes, so just to show you what I'm doing, and the reason why I sort of haven't gone to a data model yet is that, as you can see in this template, this is the template of my data strategy, my use case portfolio. I can see that I've got all sorts of links to the IT system, to the use case category, to the different reference data elements. And here you can see I've got a link to my digital strategy. I've got a link to my business strategic pillar. I've got a link to employees. And I've got a link to my issues, the priorities that I'm dealing with. Does that answer your question, Valerie? I just found it too difficult. If I started with trying to build a data model, I got lost in all of these different relationships and different elements that I'm picking up.
Yeah, this kind of helps. Thanks.
Okay, so my Power BI is loading in the background. And as you can see, what I did do is I started from the DMBOK just to get a scoping. So what we're basically seeing in the DMBOK, that I've got something like 152 templates that I need to produce. I've got, of those, I've got 30 that are custom templates that are not defined in the DMBOK. And you can see here I'm picking up open data and all the different areas. And if I expand that, I basically pick up all of the different templates with the definitions and different elements like that. Okay, so this is an example of what my Power BI looks like. I can see here is these are all the different status, what my KPIs are, by knowledge area, which deliverables do I have, and I can start relating all of that data together. My data model starts to that I build in there starts to come out of that, just to show you the data model that I'm bringing together. These are all the tables. So we've got the reference data list linked to the metadata repository, linked to all these different areas. There's my different sets of capability maps. These are all the different areas and then these are ones for business architecture. This is my data model for the metadata repository, and then the DMBOK coming out there. So because I've created these naming conventions and the table designs, you can see everything's in the table design. I can then point Power BI to all these different elements and pull them out independently. And you'll see that there, for example, is my table, okay, and it's got the appropriate naming convention, and then I've got the metadata that describes all the elements in the table, and that's defined with a name. There's my name here called DM artifact. there is my VM artifact metadata. So I can now pick up using Power BI. I can pick up all of the columns, and I can associate all this data together. Okay. So there's some questions here. What kind of commercial software do you recommend for metadata management? If you can, or I think, we had a similar thing. I've worked with Informatica. It does a fantastic job. The nice thing about Informatica is that everything is connected. And they're also using that Claire. I don't know if any of you remember the discussion with Barry Devlin, where he was talking about the work that Informatica are doing to use AI to automatically build the metadata, the active metadata, and Informatica are doing a great job in that as well. So they've got this single metadata repository where everything connects. Mayela, did that answer your question?
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Because this is okay. I rephrase my question because it's Informatica is a commercial software,
Yes.
and it's expensive as well, no? I
Yes.
ask because in my master I didn't finish my master of business intelligence system and data mining because I couldn't finish the project because Venezuelan problem. But I was looking for a good way or a cheapest way to manage metadata because my project was about SMEs,
Right.
small
Right.
and medium enterprises. So that was my concern because here in Venezuela, we have a lot of small and medium companies that maybe
Yes.
they are not able to manage to buy a really expensive software, no? But
Yes.
they need to manage the metadata, the BI in general. Okay,
Agreed.
that's what my question. Okay, thank you, Howard.
Right. Yes, so you've actually got quite a few options. There's quite a few open data sources. One called Data Hub that does a fantastic job of collecting the data, automating the data collection. Just a warning there in terms of it really does a great job of collecting the data, but if you let that thing loose, it just pulls in data from all over the place, and the next minute you've just got this swamp of information, and it can't make sense. But what I would really suggest is there's two parts to it. One is the actual metadata tool, and then the other one is the visualization of the metadata tool. And I would really recommend making use of something like a knowledge graph to link all of these things together. And I haven't seen a really nice presentation of that yet. I remember doing a project with Avenetia, and they got something called MetaHub that brings all this stuff together. And we did all these ETLs, and then we looked at the MetaHub results on the ETL, and it was just a black page of data moving all over the place. And now trying to get a CFO to sign the flow, because that was part of BCBS 239, it was just about impossible. So we had to do a whole lot of work to visualize the actual data lineage. Okay, so now in terms of Carolyn's question, the metadata is the spreadsheet. No, it's not the actual metadata repository. It's the Power BI that's bringing a lot of it together, and then bringing all of this information together. I don't see that as the right tool. I'm talking to John to be able to see what could we make use of his Q6 knowledge graph to be able to bring a more flexible repository together and to be able to visualize that. I'm just using Power BI at the moment to to connect all the dots and to be able to extract it and see where I am at the moment and what is connecting to what. Okay. So any questions on that? Then I'd just like to probably give Paul a chance to show what he's done. But are there any questions in terms of the generic templates and procedures and processes? Now, you may be asking, shucks, this is a massive piece of work, and that's true. It's a piece of work, but I've been surprised at how many people who actually require this in the organizations. Certainly, I've got a customer that's desperate to have all of these templates and make sure that people understand how to do it. So there's a real life situation where customer needs it and they need it very quickly. So we're under lots of pressure to try to get something working. But I'll pause again just to see if there are any questions before handing over to Paul and for Paul to show what he's done. What I will just quickly show you, this is what we're doing is as we progress, I'm busy building, we build a PowerPoint to help educate as well. So I'm just going to show you now, this is something we're doing for DII. So I think I may have showed you this. These are all the artifacts that the DMBOK publishes. Can you see this is what the DMBOK is busy putting together? But then I thought, shucks, I'm missing so much information. For example, I'm missing something called data lineage or impact analysis, and I'm missing data transformation, and I'm missing a data migration or a data latency requirement. So these are my DMBOK deliverables. These are those what we refer to as custom deliverables. So outside, when I say custom, it means it's outside of the DMBOK. The DMBOK hasn't defined it. And this is basically the process that we're going through, the definitions. Here is an architecture. Now, this is the architecture one is hard, the template's hard because I can't bring an architecture document into an Excel spreadsheet. You know, it looks something like this, and these are the images. And we, at some stage, will need to connect the images to the different areas. But then what we've got are these the different descriptions. Here we can see we've built an exchange specification in terms of being able to exchange data, to map data. What is the data service? What's the definition? What does it look like? Some examples of a data service artifact. What is a data access agreement? I don't know how many of you have seen this before. I was a bit surprised. I've worked on a data sharing agreement, but I've never really put together a data access agreement. And this is the work Veronica is doing. But first of all, it's about us understanding what it means, what the definition is, and then building an Excel spreadsheet of all of this information to piece it together. Just before going to Paul, Veronica, is there any comment you'd like to make on your data access agreement?
It's very much keep your personal information. You want to keep the Personal Information Act in mind, because it's going to be, you got to apply GDPR or PAPIA or whatever the regional data protections. This is all about protecting personal information.
Yeah, so that data privacy, data protection, those things link together a lot.
Very much so. And to be able to explain why you need every item of data that you're requesting.
Excellent. Fantastic. Then, so those are the different areas. And then I've got a data latency. How would we define data latency? So this is an example of putting together a data latency. What does it mean? And then how do we assess it? All right, Mr. Bolton, would you like to share?
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Art, for the intro. So, yeah, just being stepping up and getting involved in the project. I think it's pretty awesome. So here is that initial spreadsheet by knowledge area, so tackling data governance, and just being able to track the progress, so the template status, and starting to connect up. So for quick reference, but that's just the boring stuff, just to show you it's coming through. And then I was losing my way a little bit, so I pulled in a project plan up front, Howard, just to you probably recognize this, just to pull that in to help with just keeping myself honest in terms of getting an output every day or every 2 days and making sure I'm tracking. So just pull that in, and it auto updates the status, so we can also use that sort of format in the Power BI. And then just running across the bottom, really just a little bit more of the same that Howard showed you, but just some of the templates coming through. So the service level agreement for DQ coming through there. Howard actually populated this, got this going. Bringing in the templates for our data strategy. So just bringing in terminology that's linking up to our reference data and making sure that it's lining up. So at the end of the day, building that meta model, connecting all the columns, and then just putting some test data into the work, bringing in our SWOTs. And some of you might have already seen this, your action plan, and that will develop the roadmap. So I'm busy. We're going to use that DIY data, Howard, right, as our case study. So I've got to bring all that into building the data side of it to deliver the strategy and link it. And this is an interesting one. I'd actually never been asked it before in a project, Howard. I was asked the other day by an architect after reviewing the DMMA results, a piece of work that I'm doing, as you know. And everybody was great. The targets are set. Everything's ready for the next year in terms of what needs to be done. But the architect raised the point and said, but this view of yours, Paul, with the radar is not showing me how your uplift is actually linking to the strategy and to the business strategy. So it was an interesting, and what I like about this strategy document is, that weakness that you're addressing in the DMMA for that uplift is actually linking to the business strategy here. So something that I have to just work on for them, so I can show that architect. I don't want to name names now, if that's cool, but
no, we don't want to do that.
You know the chap. So anyway,
yeah.
So yeah, there we go. Dropped. Okay. But it was a good question, and it's important, because one of the objectives of the DMMA obviously is to say, you've positioned this work to improve your maturity, but is it lining up to what's burning in the business or what opportunities they want to take advantage of? So it was a great question from him. Here's just coming in again, just populating with some of the work we've done, roadmaps, operating model. There's a review. Some of the work scoring the operating model. You've done the business glossary. That's a change to the one we used to use. The data maturity assessment template coming through. I just need to talk to you about the scoping column, so that there's a gap here. How's it going to mess with the Power BI? But I will chat to you about that. Then I brought in, a lot of work was done here, and this wasn't, I didn't have to do too much, but it's a good start to review our communication plan with a recipe in terms of what to do, and then the communication elements coming across the top of the different channels, methods that we're going to use, how to measure it, who needs to approve, escalation paths, all that. And the one I just wanted, that was the data governance, comms and training SIPOC you and I put together a while back, using the ADCAR and bringing that structure of a decent policy to the table, and putting that together. Then just working on knowledge area principles. And I see you've already built one of these in your data management section. In the copy that I have, that doesn't have it, but I brought in the use case portfolio templates.
Yeah, and that use case portfolio, Paul, is basically linked to your strategy, which that then links to your digital strategy, which links to your business strategy.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Cool. Then
fantastic.
something that we built also, it's just the first stab at data people's gap view, looking at the different domains, the level of federation, as you know, and why we did it, and then what staff is required, and then obviously highlighting what's missing, and then how we're going to sort out that issue in terms of it's probably not a comprehensive data people's gap, but it's a start.
It's the resourcing, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's the resourcing of the, and how can we, what are the options of finding people?
Correct.
In
Yeah.
the different channels and sourcing them. Yeah.
Yeah. And then again, just the catalog for the policy documents and an example of a scorecard that we've used before.
Okay.
But this is just for the policy. I've got to work out the scorecards across the other deliverables as well. But using a similar structure to this.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's maybe pause there and just allow people to comment and ask questions on anything. Any questions? Any?
Paul, I definitely know Paul saying, all this Excel, guys, really?
I know. But I suppose when it comes to training and when it comes to bringing all this stuff together,
He must have
it's
dropped
helpful
off.
just to
Chirping
yeah.
back.
But I think we all know. Yeah, I think and that's certainly Caro's comment there, Carolyn, in terms of seeing examples of the artifacts. What do these things look like? And then what are the procedures used to build that? I think that's really what we're trying to achieve here is giving some people examples of every single DMBOK deliverable. What do they look like?
What's
And
also
then,
interesting how it is, sorry to interrupt, is I'll just go back to the which I know you've thought about because you brought it in here, but what is not always calculated in terms of the level of effort is this stuff, the dependency documents. You know, what as an input, your inputs is quite a comprehensive list in the DMBOK of all the inputs that you need to do the work. And so, yes, a lot of it is connected via the wheel. I get that. But it's just, you know, if you're just focusing on a data governance initiative, just got to realize, shucks, it's not just these deliverables. You know, where the rest, so that you can actually commit to the work. And if you're doing metadata, same thing, and throughout the different knowledge areas. So it starts to feel like sometimes you have to do it all, otherwise you can't do any. But
yeah, it is. When I was doing my data quality expectation, in terms of the rules, I had to go and build the use case, I had to build the strategies, I had to build all that thing and connect the dots before you can come back to getting the data quality expectation resolved. Yeah, I tend to agree with John O'Gorman is getting that now all connected via a knowledge graph is what I'd love to see. So really looking forward to that. Just trying to get as many of these dots connected, and then we can start putting it together. Just a comment from Veronica. I know one of get practice in terms of how to create these artifacts, because sometimes we read the DMBOK and we don't see any how to, and we've got lists of artifacts but nothing, no examples and no on how would you even build this thing.
It's gone quiet.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Don't seem to see any other comments or suggestions.
Cool, thanks, Art.
I have
And
a question if you allow me.
yes.
So the unified meta
problem.
model,
Mm,
what does the unify stand for? I mean, the meta model essentially to
yeah.
me,
So, but,
yeah, go ahead.
okay. So you remember that one slide that I put together of all those individual meta models, a meta model for BI, a meta model for data modeling, business glossary, elements like that. And the unification is about linking them all together and then bringing them up to connect to that business glossary and allowing people to come in and start searching from wherever they at. So if they're doing BI, then it's a case of saying, well, okay, how does that connect to a data lineage? And how does that connect to a master data? And how does that connect to my business glossary? So
okay.
that's,
This is the meaning of the unified. Okay, then it was
yes,
unified by
100%.
definition to me. All right, yeah, thanks. Makes sense.
Yeah, we're desperate to unify all these meta models, and that was one of the comments on John's post. If you guys go and look there, is about we tend to work in silos. Okay, I just got a meta model for BI, or I've just got a meta model for data modeling, but that doesn't help us when we want to piece everything together.
But don't we agree that building such a thing is extraordinary, like, you know, like building a Death Star? I don't know. To me, it's similar, next to impossible. I mean, literally. So how long would it take to actually not just build it, but complete it, fill fill it in, and make it a live thing, maintained, curated, etc., etc.
So what
Especially
we,
in the, yeah.
yeah. Valerie, it's a, I mean, it certainly looks to us, when we start this thing, it looks like this massive mountain. There's 150 templates that need to be defined. Now, we can certainly say for people like Informatica, they've got this job done. I haven't seen what the unified model looks like, but they have connected, when they use the Axon tool, they connected into the data lineage, and they connected across all those data dictionary elements and things like that. So they've I've never seen the underlying thing, but it would be nice to see what it's connected to. Now, the reason why it's so important to us, there are a few reasons, and that was the first presentation we did, was to say, well, we can see several problems that we have. For example, when we do a data management maturity assessment, and we asking for evidence, and so if people think, I'm at a level 3 on this deliverable or this process, the question we have to ask is please show me an example of why you think you scored so high on that artifact. And they're going to say, okay, here it is. And we have to say, well, the reason why we think it's not at a level 3 and it's a level 2 or a level 1 is because of this, and this, and you're missing these critical data elements, or you don't have a policy, or you don't have a scorecard. So if you don't have a scorecard, then how are you going to get to a level 4 or a level 5? And then we are able to show people an example of what the artifact should look like. And they say, oh, yeah, okay, we don't call it that, we call it this, but I've seen the data that you're asking for. And here's my example of what we've got. So there's the problem we have with VMMA. That's our first problem. The next problem is when we have to build all of these policies and procedures for all our practices within the organization, we run into a similar problem. We have to define everything that we create. And in Saudi, we're experiencing this where they want policies and procedures done for every single specification, every single evidence submission that they need. And that has to be created in some form of Excel spreadsheet that can be zipped up and sent to the regulator. So it's amazing how many people are they are required to bring this thing together and create a definition and a model that unifies all of this stuff.
Yeah, totally agree. Thanks.
Yes, it's a massive job. And when we think of training, also one of the things that why Veronica's getting so involved is that when we start teaching what we call data abilities, let's not talk data literacy because that sometimes can be restricted to just data science or understanding graphs or BI reports. We also need to teach people on, especially a data steward, how would you complete a data quality expectation or a data access agreement? Because we're going to allocate all this work to them, but they have no clue on what they need to do. They just don't have a clue. And so we need to be able to train them and give them examples. Valerie, what we're also seeing is how we really suffer in teaching people about the DMBOK when they just have no understanding of practically what things look like. And so they get swamped in the theory, and they just have nothing to hang the theory on, like a data latency. That's a big one. You know, DII is all about latency, and if the business, we say to them, the business needs to provide us input on what the latency requirements are, and they say, don't even know what you're talking about, and we lose so many people because they don't know what we're talking about. So it's been a massive challenge when we try to educate people and they can't hang it on anything.
I used to, in my uni period, I used to work on a thing called organizational learning. And
Yes.
yeah, and I believe that this thing could really save the day because teaching and educating people with all these things, it's a never-ending job. So how do you
Yeah.
do this with the turnover, people coming, leaving, etc.? So maybe I'm not sure if this discipline is still out there. I mean, organizational
Oh
learning.
yes. Oh yes. That's remember I said about that knowledge management. Um, even within Saudi, they're having to introduce knowledge management. And we have a rating, and one of the ratings in the schools of knowledge management is what people refer to as leaky knowledge management, meaning when the experts leave, all of that knowledge walks out the door and it just leaks. The organizational memory leaks because there's no record, there's no practice of doing it, there's no definition, what it looks like. You're 100% correct. It's becoming a big issue.
Yeah, totally true. Thank you, Howard. I need to run now. Thank you, guys. Thanks,
Okay.
Paul. Thanks,
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Debbie. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you, sir. Cheers, bye. Mayela, you had a question. I'm not sure if you want to ask it now or I see Celeste there as well. Celeste, I know you were looking at data literacy at one stage, and this is sort of how we're trying to bring.
Sorry, Howard.
Yes.
Well, yeah, no, well, I have many questions, no?
Sure.
Because especially for metadata. Yes, and in my experience within oil and gas industry, I manage a lot of data, as I said yesterday.
Yes.
But we the big project I worked on and many years ago within PDVSA, which is the national oil company in Venezuela, and it was an outsourcing managed by Schlumberger. It's
Yes.
an oil and gas yes, a company. So the roles were managed different because of the outsourcing. No, we manage everything, all of data, all of the applications, the specialized application for A&P, exploration and production. But in a common organization, who is in charge of maintenance the metadata?
Okay.
Because at that time, in my experience, I'm trying to match my experience with the framework, okay? with the
Right.
DAMA framework, okay? That's what I'm trying to do. So I'm not certified, okay, but I'm trying to match that. So in my experience, we had a database, okay, and a structured data, an Oracle database, a big database, many databases. And we manage the metadata inside of the database as a catalog, as anything, okay? And we manage the metadata, okay? The user just they were thinking about data, about the number, okay, inside, in it, but not about metadata, okay? So now the common company, who is in charge of that? Who must be in charge of that?
Okay. So there's a few steps in that answer.
Thank you.
Sure. The first step would be that data governance would come in, a CDO, and they do an assessment about what is the level of capability within the business. And that all showed you that maturity assessment, and we would see, oh, shucks, we haven't really got anybody that's specifically tasked to look after our metadata. And then data governance would be responsible for establishing a metadata program so that we would take care of our metadata. And in establishing that metadata, you would resource it, and that's what Paul was referring to as his resourcing strategy, in terms of saying, oh, shucks, we need metadata specialists and we need people to populate all this information. So very similar to what data governance may find as they come in and we don't really have a data quality program. We would do a DMMA, and in the DMMA, we'd say, well, shucks, one of our biggest risks is we don't have a quality program or we don't have a metadata program. And they would work with the business people to be able to say, these are our high risk areas and we need to get this going. So they would go through a process of putting a business case together. Why do we need metadata? Why do we need data quality? And they would wait for that to be approved, and they would then start to establish these different programs. And when you had established your metadata program, you would bring these responsible people, the data professionals that have metadata knowledge and skills and experience to be able to deliver something like this. Does that answer your question, Diane?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I forgot that the program metadata. Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
So
exactly.
yes.
Thank
So
you.
you would certainly data governance is always, remember, data governance is checking that the company's doing the right things, and we use the DMMA to check, are we doing all the right things? If we're not, get something going, get it working, and get it up and running. I always
Thank you.
blame always blame data governance for not identifying that we have a weakness and doing something about it. But then once the program's been established, then it's up to those professionals to actually get the job done.
Hi,
Celeste, you had a
Howard.
question? Yes.
Yes, I have a question. So, ideally, as you know, we have quite a small organization, and
Yes.
it's been quite a challenge to almost shift the culture to that of, people actually focusing on data. And so while we have a data strategy in place, we have a governance structure in place, I think from a maturity perspective, our organization hasn't yet shifted to fully taking on that role, or stewards taking on the role more
Yes.
seriously. However, so that does leave, a function to take on all that responsibility, in essence, governing the data, checking the quality, etc. And so our focus for next year will be on implementing a data warehouse, and then also with that, working on the metadata,
Right.
or developing the metadata strategy. So I just wanted to find out what would be the best way, I suppose, from your perspective. Or maybe I should like to step back, because I've been working with Paul, and what we've done is use the Elite tool and actually started building the conceptual models and then the business glossary. So how does that compare to, I suppose, your unified model that you've showed or spoken to now, and how would I then
Right.
expand it further?
Celeste, so this is a great example and of now coming back after your DMMA, after you've done a maturity assessment, and say, shucks, I'm missing some foundational elements. And what you will find is, you create this data warehouse, then you build the reports, and then people say, where did you get this data from? Where is it coming from? And now you can't answer the question because you don't have any data lineage. So you'll find that one of the ways of creating trust within you for your business people is when they say, where does this come from? And you can say, there it is. Can you see it goes from here to here to here? That's what it's done. That's how the things were calculated. There's a big trust level compared to they ask the question, you say, well, give me a week or two and I'll come back to you and I'll show you what happened and things like that. That's when you start to get embarrassed that some of this foundational metadata and data quality is not in place. So I I would I would really suggest that yes, the data warehouse is important, but just dropping all the BI there and not being able to check your quality of your data products and being able to explain to people, what is the level of quality that I'm getting. I would suggest that you want to bring in those in a concurrent thrust. And having some form of quality expectations that the business, when you define let's say you want to build a report, yours is going to be a lot on the students, and how are they doing, how are they progressing, and elements like that. Whenever you get a report, you'd want to say, okay, great, I like that report, but please tell me what is the quality expectation of this report, and which data steward is going to help me define that so that I know that when I build the report, if it's dropping below acceptable values, I can start to say to them, hey, be careful here. This level of quality is not acceptable for your current use of that. And that's where bringing in these other elements are important. And then as soon as you bring in all these individual elements, you're going to have quality people having this metadata people having that, data lineage, data integration having that. And now it's a case of how do I bring all this stuff together?
Okay, I see. Right, no, thank you. That makes absolute sense. Thank you, Howard.
And I'm hoping that when we have these tools and the templates, you'll be able to help people, give them examples, show them what it looks like, show them what they need to do, and then you'll build something for yourself, or you'll make use of this.
Yeah. Definitely, because I mean, I think the one thing that I'm looking at developing is sort of a reporting framework as well, so that we understand what the reports are that the business requires, how often they're required, who's accountable, where that data is coming from, how often,
And
I suppose, you know, that data is being refreshed so we can manage costs as well. So I think it's really remarkable that you are developing the templates, because I think that's the one thing that's missing from the DM block, is that it's the, you know, the how to actually do it.
It's desperate. We're desperate. You know, we're just finding some people just get so overloaded that after 2 days they just give up. They just quit. And so we need to stream them and be able to say, okay, let's come on a more practical course. This is the more practical version of the DMBOK before you go into the big 4 days of intense information overload.
But thank you, it's exciting. I'm loving all the sessions and the learning. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you. Mayela, any, I see you still on there. Any further questions from you?
Not yet. Thank you, Howard. This
Okay,
is
fantastic.
I really appreciate your job. Yes, all of these meetings for me are very, very good, very informed. Okay.
Fantastic.
As I
No, it's a
said,
pleasure.
I'm trying to match my knowledge with the framework.
Sure, it's
Sorry. Sorry, Howard,
excellent.
if my questions are so you know, so basic, but sometimes I
Don't
just
worry. Don't worry.
the question
Wait.
comes and,
I think
that's it. Okay.
lots of people are
I'm
too. Lots of
Venezuelan,
people
okay? I'm from Venezuela. I'm
no,
like
no,
this.
that's fantastic. Lots of people are too scared to ask the question, Mayela. So it's nice to just have those questions, and people can, you know, it's important that they learn. Excellent. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to, Paul, thank you very much for helping me out. I'm glad that you.
Yeah, just cool, man.
Excellent, sir.